This is Matthew Cratter from Trader University, and today I want to answer the question, is Litecoin better than Bitcoin? Litecoin actually used to be in the top 10. If we take a look at this historical snapshot from the 26th of January 2014, we can see that Litecoin is second in terms of market cap, is second to Bitcoin, followed by XRP and Peercoin and a couple of coins we've never heard of. Today, if you take a look at it, Litecoin has fallen down the ranks into place, market cap rank number 13. Now, Litecoin was created fairly early on. It was created on October 7th, 2011 by Charlie Lee, who I believe previously worked at Google as an engineer. Litecoin is basically a copy-paste of Bitcoin that replaces the proof-of-work hashing algorithm SHA-256, which is well known, replaces it with another proof-of-work algorithm, hashing algorithm, which is called Scrypt. I believe that's the correct way to pronounce it. Litecoin also differs in that it has 2.5-minute block times versus Bitcoin's 10-minute average block times. Bitcoin max supply, as we all know, is 21 million coins. Litecoin's max supply is 4 times that level, for the obvious reason that it has block times which are a quarter of the time of Bitcoin's 10-minute average block times. Now, Litecoin was marketed by Charlie Lee as silver to Bitcoin's gold, and I've always thought that this was in itself was a huge red flag. The reason that silver was used under a gold standard or a bimetallic standard, silver coins were used for the small denominations of money. So, for example, it's hard to buy a cup of coffee with a bar of gold simply because gold is so dense and so valuable. And so silver coins and small silver pieces evolved to serve this purpose of smaller denominations of money. But with digital money, there's obviously no need to have a completely new coin for smaller denominations. One Bitcoin is already subdivided or can be subdivided into 100 million Satoshis or sats. And if we ever need to subdivide sats even further, it's going to be trivially easy to do that. And of course, this only becomes a problem where the value of one sat approaches dollar parity. One sat equals $1, and that would imply a price per Bitcoin of $100 million. So this is indeed a very high-class problem to have. Now, Charlie Lee is a very smart engineer, and he understood these things. So I have to conclude that this silver to Bitcoin's gold was nothing more than an empty marketing slogan. It's a very good marketing slogan. I still see it in my YouTube comments, but it really makes no sense when you think about it. When something is digitally divisible, you don't need a completely new coin for smaller denominations. The bigger question is, can Litecoin actually compete with Bitcoin? The problem for Litecoin is that Bitcoin had a 2-year head start. It really is the grandfather, the father of all these coins, and Litecoin has only been around since 2011. So it had that 2-year lag, and it's been unsuccessfully trying to play catch up. As we've seen, it's actually been slipping down the ranks quite badly. Bitcoin has a much stronger global brand than Litecoin. If you ask any small kid or any grandparent, most of them will have heard of Bitcoin at this point, but I can guarantee you that they probably have not heard of Litecoin. So Bitcoin has that much larger global brand reach. Another small problem, the inventor of Litecoin actually himself did not believe in it enough to hodl. This tells you quite a bit. You don't listen to what people say, you listen to what people do. And Charlie Lee happened to dump all of his coins. He had very, very good market timing. He dumped all of them in December of 2017, unlike Satoshi, who has never moved or sold a single sat. If you're finding this video helpful so far, I just ask you to help support the channel by clicking the like button, and especially clicking that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. So Charlie Lee dumped all of his coins in December of 2017. He said that he did this because he thought there was a conflict of interest, etc. And there may have been because he's a living founder, but this is never a good sign when the founder of your project completely exits the project. We can see where Charlie Lee got out. He got out here in December of 2017. Then there was a long down period. This is the Litecoin versus the US dollar. Litecoin did make a marginal new high in US dollar terms in the most recent bull market, and has since fallen back down to its bear market levels from the past bear market. Now, proponents of Litecoin are very excited about some Bitcoin maxis who have been talking about it as a digital commodity. I'll link to this interview with Michael Saylor, where he says he believes that that Litecoin has a chance to qualify as a commodity, and in that case would not need to register with the SEC. You can also see people, you can see memes like this: Bitcoin maxis unite, Litecoin is a commodity like Bitcoin, and we can see various well-known Bitcoiners in this. The only problem with this argument, I would say, is that just because something is classified by US regulators or security regulators or commodity regulators as a commodity does not automatically make it valuable or worth investing in. It just means you're not going to have as many problems with the SEC. But I'll give you an example of another commodity that is probably closer to Litecoin, and that would be manure, physical manure. This is also a commodity. Doesn't mean you want to put your life savings into it. Now let's compare market caps and liquidity. Bitcoin, as I'm recording this, has a fully diluted market cap of 353 billion, daily trading volume of 21 billion, 22 billion, according to CoinMarketCap. By contrast, Litecoin is much, much smaller, fully diluted market cap of about 6.5 billion, and daily trading volume of 631 million. So if I'm an institutional investor, there's no way to easily buy $1 billion worth of Litecoin. That would be about 15% of the current market cap and about 1.5 or 1.6 days of average daily trading volume. By contrast, if I want to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, that's just 0.28%, so about a quarter of a percentage point of Bitcoin's market cap and 4.6% of daily average trading volume, which is quite doable. That's probably near the upper bounds of what you want to do in a market. Usually, if you're an institutional investor, you don't want to be more than 1 or 2% of the daily volume. But this is still means you could buy Bitcoin, probably $1 billion worth of Bitcoin over 2 days. Now, why does this even matter? Why does market cap matter? Why does liquidity matter? Well, market cap matters because it's a very good way of telling you the relative demand for a project. And if we look at that, we can see that the demand for Bitcoin is many, many times the size of the demand for Litecoin. And this is how the market is pricing the whole protocol. Why is liquidity important? Well, if we want Bitcoin to become the world's new money, it needs to be able to accommodate large positions taken by institutional investors like endowments and pension funds and large corporations like MicroStrategy, but also by central banks and even nation states. And it's going to be very difficult for Litecoin to ever catch up and have the same depth and liquidity as Bitcoin, simply because the more liquid something is, usually the more liquid it becomes, because larger players go there. And it's one of these things, examples of where having more of something means that you're probably going to have more of it in the future. So these things really matter, and people who think that Litecoins can be able to catch up and somehow go from 6 billion into the hundreds of billions while Bitcoin loses market cap, you have to have a very strong reason for that, and I've been unable to find a reason. So it's going to be very difficult for Litecoin to play catch up with Bitcoin. Of course, if you're using that liquidity and market cap argument, doesn't this mean that you should prefer US dollars, which is an even more deep, higher market cap, more liquid, more well-known market? Obviously, the answer for this is you shouldn't, because the US dollar is a fiat ship coin. It can be printed to infinity. It's not scarce at all. It's easy to censor, blah, blah, blah. Just ask Russia or Libya or anyone else who's had their bank accounts frozen. So this is why the liquidity and depth of market and market cap argument doesn't really apply to fiat, because it's a very different animal. And Litecoin does have these advantages over US fiat, that it does have a maximum supply. So it's probably a better place to store your value than holding it in fiat US dollars, but definitely not nearly as good as Bitcoin, as we're going to see. Next, if we take a look at the size of the Bitcoin network, in other words, all of the reachable Bitcoin nodes, currently at 15,245 reachable nodes. By contrast, Litecoin is a much, much smaller project, just having over 1,054 total nodes. So again, much, much smaller project, much less distributed globally. And what this means is there are many fewer people who take running a node seriously in Litecoin. It also turns out that having faster blocks, 2.5-minute block times versus Bitcoin, doesn't really matter now that Bitcoin has the Lightning Network, which provides near instantaneous, cheap payments. You can also use the Lightning Network, as critics will point out. You could also use it with Litecoin. This should be Litecoin. But the question is, why would you? Simply because Bitcoin offers much deeper liquidity. So this is the argument that Litecoin's faster, so you should use Litecoin. But if you can use the Bitcoin Lightning Network for your fast needs, there's really no need to have another currency for this. And even if you wanted to use the Lightning Network with Litecoin, why would you? Because Bitcoin offers much deeper liquidity there as well. So if we take a look at the Lightning Network that's been built out, it's an open protocol. It's been built on Litecoin as well. According to the network explorers, there are 184 channels on the Litecoin Lightning Network. And the capacity, I actually cannot believe it's this low, $3,489, which is really not a lot of money, especially when you're talking about a global payment network. The Bitcoin Lightning Network, by contrast, over 76,000 channels and over $85 million in capacity. So again, here, this is another example of where Litecoin is decent, but Bitcoin wins the race by quite a bit. Now, a technical side note, and maybe I'll make a video about this tomorrow if people are interested, having faster block times does not guarantee faster final settlement assurances. This is an argument in its own right. And once we make this argument, you'll see why having faster block times really doesn't make any difference, even apart from the Lightning Network. I'll put a link to this Lightning Network Explorer for Litecoin in the description notes below, where you can see the number of channels and the network capacity. And then I'll do the same for Bitcoin, where you can see right here the Lightning Network. You can see the number of nodes, the number of channels, and the capacity, so you can do the comparison. Now, the market prices would also seem to agree with our conclusions. We saw how the market cap of Litecoin is much smaller than Bitcoin's, and how it's been falling off in recent years as their other altcoin competitors. But the price chart of Litecoin, we already saw it in US dollars. The price chart of Litecoin in Bitcoin terms shows Litecoin making a series of lower highs and lower lows against Bitcoin. And Litecoin failed to make a new high against Bitcoin even in the bull market, the great bull market of 2020 to 2021, as we can see here. This is the chart of Litecoin versus Bitcoin. When the chart is going up, that means Litecoin is appreciating against Bitcoin. When the chart is going down, that means Bitcoin is strengthening against Litecoin. It looks like Litecoin has actually had a little bit of a renaissance in terms of its price against Bitcoin since Ethereum. This may just be a byproduct of Ethereum miners switching their hash power to Litecoin. I don't know if that's something they're able to do with GPUs. I would assume it is. So we are seeing a slight bounce of Litecoin in Bitcoin terms. But when you look at the overall pattern, especially the last few years, you see a pattern of lower lows and lower highs. This is not what you want to see when your project is competing against Bitcoin. As we saw, Litecoin has done okay against the US dollar, but why would you hold your money in Litecoin when you can hold it in Bitcoin and outperform not just the US dollar, but also outperform Litecoin? So unfortunately, I'm forced to conclude that Litecoin is just another zombie protocol. The thing about cryptocurrencies is they really do have trouble dying as long as you just have a few people using them, a few people running nodes or making transactions or trades. Then you end up with a market cap and you end up with the network still being around. But I would say that when a cryptocurrency fails to make a new high against Bitcoin, especially in a bull market, you can be sure that they're on their way to irrelevance. And this is what we've seen as Litecoin has fallen down the rankings. And this is what happens to competitors of Bitcoin. There's always new competitors, and they're always falling down the rankings against Bitcoin. People try to make it really complicated. I don't know why people feel like they have to go out and invest in Dogecoin or Litecoin or Ethereum, because it's actually really easy. You just dollar cost average into Bitcoin, you hodl it for as long as you possibly can, and then you don't worry about whether Dogecoin is a commodity or Litecoin is a commodity, because these are basically just ship coins. And even if they don't have an issuer, if there's not a corporation or government behind them, and hence under U.S. regulations, they are commodities. As we saw with the example of manure, it doesn't mean at all that they are good investments. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.